Watch me do this puzzle while you listen to this story. So, with this topic today, I did a lot of research behind this, and there is certain pronunciations of this word. So, the colonized pronunciation of this word is Igbo landing, and then the regular pronunciation is Igbo, which I'm probably still saying it wrong. But I do realize when I research that there's a certain pronunciation that people prefer over the other. So I'm going to try to pronounce it the best way that I can. So in this piece, I'm going to give you guys the overall history behind the Igbo people, the Igbo story. And then there's going to be a folklore, which is a common folklore about this. It's called the Flying Africans, as well as a couple of mini stories, some mini folklore and tales behind the Igbo people. So bear with me on the name. If I pronounce it wrong, I'm sorry, but here we go. So, according to oral history and historical records, a group of enslaved Igbo people from what is now Nigeria were brought to Georgia in 1803 aboard a slave ship. After arriving, many resisted captivity. During transport through martial lands near Dunbar Creek, the captives reportedly rebelled against the enslavers. Rather than live in bondage, several walked into the water together and died. The story became a powerful symbol of resistance, dignity, spiritual return, and African American Igbo memory. Most enslaved Igbo's individuals' names were never recorded by slave traders, which is sadly common in slavery history. One of the few names tied to the incidents is Roswell King, not one of the Igbo captives, but the white overseer who documented aspects of the event. The enslaver involved was connected to Thomas Spaulding. The Igbo men and women themselves were largely stripped of their names in written records and oral tradition. They are remembered collectively as the Igbo or Igbos. True stories and legends surrounding Igbo landing. So one of them is the March into the Water. One of the best known accounts says the Igbo captives sang in their language while walking into Dunbar Creek together. Some stories say they believed death would return their spirits home to Africa. And also, another story, the Flying Africans. A famous Gullah Geechee legend grew from this tragedy. In folklore, the Igbo people did not drown. They rose into the sky and flew back to Africa. This became part of the broader myth of the Flying Africans, a symbol of spiritual freedom and liberation. So this actually connects to a lot of the Black culture. Couple of movies being the Black Panther, themes about ancestral memory and the ocean, Lovecraft Country, and we have Songs of Solomon. So, the historical debate about this is historians generally agree a mass rebellion and deaths occurred, but details differ. So, some records say many drowned, others say some escaped into swamps and joined maroon communities. Exact numbers are uncertain, ranging from a dozen to over 70 people. So, Igbo landing is remembered not as surrender, but as one of the earliest acts of collective resistance against slavery in the United States. For many descendants of enslaved Africans, it symbolizes refusal to accept dehumanization. So now I'm going to give you guys the folklore of the Flying Africans. So, long ago on the coast of Nigeria, there was a belief among some enslaved Africans that the soul could never truly be chained. Elders whispered that people stolen from their homeland carried something sacred inside them, a memory of freedom that no whip or ship could erase. When captives were forced across the Atlantic during the slave trade, many stories spread among enslaved communities in Americas about people who escaped not by land but by spirit. These stories became known as the legend of the Flying Africans. One of the most famous versions is tied to Igbo landing in Georgia. According to Gullah Geechee oral tradition, after the Igbo's captives rebelled against the slave traders, they reached the water's edge, exhausted, beaten, and surrounded. They looked back toward the ocean, toward Africa. An elder among them is said to have spoken words in their native tongue. Some versions say he reminded them who they truly were. Others say he called upon the spirits of their ancestors. Then something miraculous happened. The people began to rise, not with wings, but as if the weight of slavery itself had fallen from their bodies. The chains no longer mattered. One by one, then all together, they lifted into the air above the marshes and flew back across the ocean toward home. Some stories say that people transformed into birds, others say they walked across the water. Some say only their spirits flew while their bodies remained behind. But the meaning stayed the same. Freedom of the soul can never be owned. The legend survived for generations among the Gullah Geechee people. Parents told it to children quietly at night. It became a symbol of survival, resistance, and remembering Africa when the world tried to erase it. The story later inspired major works in Black literature and culture, including Songs of Solomon, once again, Daughters of the Dust, and Lovecraft Country, again. Today, the flying Africans are remembered not as literal history, a way enslaved people transformed unbearable suffering into a story of power, return, and freedom. So now here I have 4 short stories for you guys revolving around this said here topic. So the Whisper at Shore is the first one. The captive stood ankle deep in a Georgia marsh, chains rattling softly against the tide. An Igbo elder closed his eyes and whispered the names of their ancestors. The wind rose suddenly. One woman lifted first, her feet leaving the water like a feather carried upward. The others followed behind her, soaring silently into the gray sky, while the slave traders watched in terror from the shore. Number 2, the boy who remembered home. A young boy on a slave ship could barely remember Africa, except for his mother singing. At Ibu Landing, frightened and exhausted, he heard another captive begin the same melody. The song spread from voice to voice until everyone joined in. As they sang, the boy felt lighter. When he opened his eyes, the ocean below him looked small, and ahead he could see the golden shoreline of home. Story number 3, the Marsh Spirits. The plantation owner swore the marsh was haunted. At night, glowing figures walked across the water near Dunbar Creek. Some said they were the spirits of evil people who refused slavery. Others claimed they were not ghosts at all, only the flying Africans returning every year to guide lost souls back toward freedom. Story number 4, the woman with the silver bracelets. An enslaved woman kept 2 silver bracelets hidden beneath her sleeves, the last pieces of her homeland. Before walking into the water, she removed them and placed them in the hands of a child beside her. Remember where you come from, she said. The child survived years later. He told the grandchildren that on the night she disappeared into the mist, he saw her rise above the waves like a bird heading east. So that is the end of Ibu Landing. If you like and enjoyed that story and a little part of history, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And there's also a puzzle piece missing in this puzzle, so enjoy.